Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Batra, page 139, A, top of the page, with the words V'hatanya. But isn't it taught in a Braita? Tosefta in Ketubot 8.5. Shamin es hamechubarin lelokeach. That in a similar case, the court appraises the produce still connected to the ground for the purchaser of the land, who must pay the seller's heirs for it. Accordingly, the connected produce also belongs to the heirs. Amar ula loikashya kan bivnoi kan be'acher hoyo v'datem shalodem keroiva etzed benoi. Ula said that this is not difficult. Here in the Mishnah, the halacha is stated with regard to his son who receives the connected produce after the father's death. There, in the Braita, the halacha is stated with regard to another person who purchased the land from the son. Since a person's disposition is favorable toward his son, the father certainly intended to bequeath the connected produce to his son together with the property itself. When the son sold it to another person, there was no such intention. Mishnah. The Mishnah says, that's the end of the Gemara. There's a new Mishnah. If a person died and left adult and minor sons, the adults are not provided for by using funds of the minors, and the minors are not sustained, meaning they do not receive food by using funds of the adults. Rather, they receive a share of the inheritance equally, and each son sees to his needs from his own share. Okay. Nasu hagedolim yisu haketanim v'imamu ketanim harei anu noisin kederech shenososum atem ein shoymin lohem elama shenosom lohem avihem nosan. If the adults married, the minors marry, as the Gemara will explain. But if the minors say, we are marrying in the same manner that you adults married during our father's lifetime, the court does not listen to them. Rather, whatever their father gave the adults in his lifetime, he gave them, and the minors do not have the right to receive more than their share of the inheritance. Similarly, if the father left adult and minor daughters but no sons, in which case his daughters inherit the estate, the adults are not provided for by using funds of the minors, and the minors are not sustained by using funds of the adults. Rather, they receive a share of the inheritance equally, and each daughter sees to her needs from her share. If the adult daughters marry, the minor daughters marry, as the Gemara will explain. But if the minors say, we are marrying in the same manner that you adults married during our father's lifetime, the court does not listen to them. This following halacha is a stringency with regard to daughters' inheritance vis-a-vis sons' inheritance. The halacha is that the daughters are sustained by using funds of the sons as stipulated in their mother's marriage contract, but they are not sustained by using the funds of the other daughters. And that's the Mishnah. We're now starting the Gemara, the Talmud Bava. Okay. Zog the Gemara, Amarave, Hai Gadol Achai de Levash, Vikasimi Basel, my Avad. Rava says, with regard to this eldest of the brothers who wears garments and covers himself from the common property of the house, what he did is done, and the other brothers cannot subtract from his share of the inheritance as a result. But the Gemara asks, what didn't we learn in the Mishnah? That the adults are not provided for by using the funds of the minors? The Gemara answers, the Mishnah is referring to an unemployed person. Bisracha. Bisracha. An unemployed person. Bisracha. It's interesting that the word schar means like schirut, or schar implies payment. So it's like maybe they switch around the letters to make it like sracha. Sracha is a unemployed person, but schar is payment. So interesting, the same letters. Rava was referring to a brother who handles the finance of the entire family. Therefore, it is in the interest of all the brothers for him to wear appropriate attire. Sracha, pshita. Ma'udetema nichalu telonin ninaval komash malon. The Gemara asks, if the Mishnah is referring to an unemployed person, isn't it obvious that he may not take from the common inheritance of all the brothers? The Gemara answers, lest you say that it is preferable for them that he dress appropriately so that he will not be repulsive, thereby dishonoring the family name. The Mishnah teaches us that he does not have the right to take money for clothing from the common inheritance, and if he does so, the brothers can subtract from his share of the inheritance as a result. The Mishnah teaches that if the adult's married, the minor is married. The Gemara asks, what is it saying? What does this mean? Rav Yehuda says that this is what it is saying. If the adults married after their father's death and used the common inheritance to pay for their weddings, the minors that marry after their father's death may also pay for their weddings from the common inheritance. But if the adults married during their father's lifetime, and the minors said after their father's death, we will marry in the same manner that you married, the court does not listen to them. Rather, whatever sum their father gave the adults to pay for their weddings in his lifetime, he gave them, and the minors do not have the right to demand that same sum from the inheritance. The Mishnah teaches that if the father left adult and minor daughters, and the adults marry, the minors marry. Avu bar Geniva sent a question to Rava. Our teacher instruct us, if a woman borrowed money and consumed it, and before repaying the debt she arose and married, bringing her property into the marriage, what is the halacha? Is the husband considered a purchaser of her property, or is he considered an heir to her property? The halachic ramification of this dilemma is as follows. Is he considered a purchaser, and the creditor therefore cannot collect his wife's premarital debt from him, as one does not collect from the purchasers a loan by oral agreement? Or perhaps he is considered her heir, and one collects from the heirs a loan by oral agreement. Omar le tenina nasukedoilois yisuketanois. My lab nasukedoilois de baal yisuketanois mi baal. Rava said to him, we learned the answer to this question in the Mishnah. If the adult daughter is married, the minor daughters marry. What, is it not teaching that if the adult daughter is married, each one of them transferring money from the common inheritance to her husband to cover the wedding expenses, the minor daughters also marry, paying for the wedding from the money that each elder sister transferred to her husband. Clearly, although the money the elder daughters took from the inheritance for their weddings has the status of a loan by oral agreement, their husbands are liable to return it. This proves that the husbands are considered heirs. The Gemara answers no. The Mishnah is teaching that if the adults married and each one transferred money to her husband, the minors also marry and each one may transfer money from the common inheritance to her husband for the wedding expenses. They cannot collect money from what was already transferred by their sisters to their husbands. The Gemara asks, is that so? But didn't Rabbi Chia teach that if the adults married and transferred money to the husband, the minors marry and collect money from the husband of each elder sister? The Gemara answers, even according to this interpretation, there is no proof from the Mishnah with regard to the case of a loan by oral agreement. Perhaps the provision of wedding expenses for the daughters is different, as it generates publicity, since it is well known that a specific portion of a person's estate is liened to the future wedding expenses of his single daughters. It has the status of a loan with a promissory note. Therefore, the younger daughters can collect from the husbands of the elder daughters, even if the status of the husbands is that of purchasers. Amar le Rav Papa le Rava, lav hainu shalach avin be'igalte, mi shemes v'niach almono, ba'as almono soyin nezoynes minichosov, meseis habas almono soyin nezoynes minichosov, meis habas Rav Yehuda ben Achoyse shel Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina, al yadi hayamaisim imru almono soyin nezoynes minichosov. Rav Papa said to Rava, is this not identical to the halacha that Ravin sent in his letter from Eretz Yisrael? The halacha states that, with regard to one who died and left a widow and a daughter, his widow is sustained from his property. If the daughter then married, the widow is still sustained from his property, although it is now in the possession of the daughter's husband, as she had inherited the property from her father with regard to a case where the daughter then died and her husband inherited from her. Rav Yehuda, son of the sister of Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina, says, this incident occurred with me, and the sages said that the late man's widow is still sustained from his property, although it is fully owned by his daughter's husband. Rav Papa explains, granted, if you say the husband is considered an heir, it is due to that reason that his father-in-law's widow is sustained from his property. It is still liened to her sustenance. But if you say that a husband is considered a purchaser of his wife's property, why is his father-in-law's widow sustained from his property? The purchasers of inherited property are not obligated to sustain the widow. Amar Abaye says, Ilav deshalachovin anan lo yadinan batran eluhein she'ein choizrim v'yoy v'la b'choyra. Abaya said, if Ravin had not sent this letter, we would not have known that the husband has this. Would we not have known that the husband has the status of a purchaser? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah, Mecharot 52b, that these properties do not return to their original owners in the Jubilee year? See Leviticus 25:13-24. The portion of the firstborn, meaning it does not return to the common ownership of the brothers to be shared equally, like the rest of the inheritance, but rather remains in the possession of the firstborn.